Let's go back to our top story this hour. Police say the suspect in the Brown University shooting was found dead inside a New Hampshire storage unit just last night. The discovery put an end to a days-long manhunt that stretched across Rhode Island and Massachusetts. This was the scene when police arrived to that storage facility. Investigators are now combing through evidence to get new information about a possible motive and how the shooter was able to leave the scene. Meanwhile, both Brown University and MIT, they are mourning the loss of their community members. Investigators say the same shooter carried out both attacks. Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Neronha joins me now for more on this. Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time. We know it was a busy night for you last night, but I want to start with the big question in this case, and that is about a motive. What do we know about the suspect's motives for these crimes?
Yeah, well, look, I don't think we know conclusively what those motives were. In the case of the MIT professor, seems personal there. There is, obviously an ethnic connection and some overlap in their time in Lisbon going back some years. That's not our jurisdiction's case, so I know less about that one. The Brown one, frankly, remains somewhat of a mystery to us. I mean, certainly the shooter, the murderer, had a connection to Brown, but it is pretty distant, and so I just don't think we know enough yet, and I don't want to speculate at this point. I think we may know more in the coming days, but I can't guarantee it.
Of course, of course. An interesting part of this investigation centers around a Reddit post from a person being called John. And we can see that post included details like the make and model of the car, the fact that it may have been a rental, where it was parked, and also the fact that the suspect used a key fob to open the car. We're looking at that post here on our screen. And now this Redditor spoke to police. Can you tell us how important that Reddit post was, and also the interview? How was all of that important in this investigation?
Yeah, look, in my experience, and I've been a state or federal prosecutor now for 30 years, and what happens in cases similar to this, there's no case like this that I've experienced, there's some that are similar, is, the investigation starts, it can be hard at first. You don't have a whole lot at first, but law enforcement pulls at what I call threads of evidence, and eventually you tug on one and it really unravels the garment, in this case, the case. And that really happened here. Once the Reddit poster, the Reddit poster and the person described as John in our affidavit to get an arrest warrant down here for murder in Rhode Island, we didn't know they were the same person until John approached a Providence police officer and came into the Providence police station and gave an interview. And once we had that interview, we were on the path very quickly to identifying our suspect. Based on not only John's account of his interaction with the suspect, corroborated by the videotape we'd been gathering over the previous several days, but also led us to the vehicle, which led us to the rental, which led us to the name. And once we had the name of the suspect, which is true in really every case, and it was something that I had tried to emphasize to the public, which is why we really needed their help identifying him. Once you can identify somebody by name, law enforcement can find that person really quickly, even in a case like this where the shooter was really taking significant steps to cover his tracks.
And were you all trying to find this Reddit poster earlier on?
Well, look, yeah, I mean, we were, and that's why we put that image up. We didn't know at the time it was the same person, but that's why you put out, the kind of information. As you get information, you decide what can we put out that will help the investigation and not harm a prosecution, right? What helps us identify somebody and not hurt a prosecution? I mean, identify the target. So that's why we put the picture of John out, because we knew from our video surveillance, which we had developed during the course of that day, that John had had an interaction with the subject. And once that went out there and he saw it, he knew that police wanted to speak to him. And he approached two Providence police officers on the east side of Providence and said, "I'm ready to come in and talk." And he did. He was extraordinarily articulate, extraordinarily persuasive. His interview matched what we saw on the surveillance camera footage that we gathered from around the neighborhood to a T. And then we were off to the races. We got the name, and within 24 hours, we had run this case to ground. With the subject dead, and our case down here effectively closed.
Yeah. Peter, we know investigators, they searched the home of the last known address to that shooter in Miami. And I know this is still an ongoing investigation and there is not much you can say, but did that search reveal clues about his digital footprint that could help with figuring out a motive to all of this?
Yeah, not to my knowledge yet. I think that is, and I don't want to speculate, because I want to be able to the extent we can, give the victims' families and the victims, the shooting victims that thank God survived, the 9 of them, and the families of the 2 wonderful young people that are deceased. As a parent of 2 Brown graduates in the last 5 years or so, I know that campus really well, and I feel like I'm part of the community. We want to give them accurate answers, and I don't want to speculate as to motive. I think we know that the killing in Massachusetts was personal. I don't think it's a big leap to conclude that. But what the motive was to walk into that classroom and indiscriminately attempt to murder young people on the edge of adulthood, I just don't think we know. And it's so awful. It's hard to even begin to understand what would drive anyone to do that.
Yeah, it's just tragic and senseless. Investigators were able to link this suspect, speaking of that, the victim in Massachusetts there, investigators linked the suspect to the shooting of the MIT professor because of the car. So are you looking for any more evidence, like, say, firearms or even bullet casings that could show a stronger link in the case?
Yeah, so one of the things that will happen over the next several days is we'll do DNA comparisons. We'll do ballistics testing, but there's no doubt, based on the evidence at the scene at the New Hampshire scene and the recovery of the deceased shooter. There's no doubt, based on that and the video evidence that we developed once we had this person's name, that it is the same person. There's no doubt in my mind at all. But just to for purposes of completeness, and we're going to continue to do those ballistics testing and the DNA testing, both for finality, but also because you can learn something from that kind of forensic testing every time you do it.
Yeah, and Peter, I want to ask this: do you all know how long that suspect may have been dead for before police found him?
We don't. I think that for those of us who've been around a long time, I was at the 3rd floor of the Providence Police Station with an outstanding group of men and women from the Providence Police Department, Rhode Island State Police, and our multiple state, federal partners. There are downtimes. There's downtime while you're waiting, particularly when the scene is unfolding and getting secured in New Hampshire. We're down in Rhode Island. But I think most of us knew that with 4, choppers overhead, that this guy, if we didn't hear anything, either coming out or shots fired inside, that he was likely to be deceased. But I don't feel comfortable telling you and your viewers exactly when that happened. But I'm just glad that that part of the investigation is done, and we have achieved finality in that respect, at least.
Yeah. Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Neronha, once again, thank you so much for making time for us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you.
Thank you.